It is 9:10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It is the 9th day of February 2026, and this is episode 1253 of Bitcoin. And Bithumb had some fat fingers. Apparently sent $44 billion to users, and that caused problems. We'll get into it. And we'll get into a lot more, too, because this is Bitcoin, and it's all the news that you can use about Bitcoin and macro around the world with me, your host, David Bennett, here today. And we're going to talk a little bit also about the U.S. government. And Jim Cramer opening his mouth about Trump buying Bitcoin. I don't know why he says things like this, but we've got a story about it. Then we'll dig into the most surprising Bitcoin stories in the Epstein files. I mean, we might as well have some fun. It's Monday. Last week sucked. Let's have just a little bit of fun. And then we're going to run, because Polymarket is not having fun. They have decided to fight back in a big, big way. And if you don't know what we're talking about with Polymarket, you will by the end of the show. Lightning is proving skeptics wrong. Yeah, Lightning has basically been throwing the skeptics around the room for like 8 years, and you're going to learn more about it. CoinShares has a report that a scant amount of Bitcoin may be vulnerable to quantum attacks. We'll see their reasoning. Again, the quantum FUD thing, it's not that it needs to go away, because quantum is an issue. Yes, it's probably going to happen soon, actually probably later than sooner. But it doesn't mean we let our guard down, but it also means that we should honestly take a big, deep breath. I'm pretty sure that a machine capable of breaking the elliptic curve signature construction in Bitcoin is not going to happen in 24 hours or next week, by the way. One of these days, could it happen? Yes, it could. And by that time, I think we'll actually be ready. I don't see the need for everybody to lose their mind. However, CoinShares is shedding a little bit of light onto this whole thing. Strategy buys more Bitcoin at a loss. He needs to stop buying. He needs to. Michael Saylor, I know you don't listen to this show, but if somebody listens to this show that has the ear of Mike, could you get him on the phone and tell him Monday through Thursday Bitcoin buying is not an option for him? It's just not. But he also has something to say about quantum stuff. He wants to be a champion, maybe a white knight. Who knows? Then we're going to end it off with Bitcoin difficulty plunging. Oh my God, this is going to be a mining death spiral. There is more fodder for FUD on the table right now than I've seen in a very, very long time. But first, Bithumb, which is not helping FUD, by the way. Bithumb Bitcoin blunder sends $44 billion to users and rattles the crypto markets. This was actually published yesterday. Micah Zimmerman from Bitcoin Magazine has it laid out for us. South Korean Bitcoin exchange Bithumb said that it mistakenly distributed more than $40 billion worth of Bitcoin to customers during a promotional rewards event, triggering sharp price volatility last week for Bitcoin price. Let's just pause and take a deep breath. A 40 billion, that's billion with a B, ladies and gentlemen, $40 billion, United States dollars worth of mistake from Bithumb. Very large and one of the older Bitcoin exchanges that's out there. How do you make a mistake like this? Let's continue. The exchange said that the incident occurred when a planned giveaway of small cash rewards was processed incorrectly. Instead of awarding about 2,000 Korean won, or roughly $1.40, some users received at least 2,000 Bitcoin each. The error resulted in the accidental distribution of roughly 620,000 Bitcoin, valued at approximately $44 billion at current prices. Oh my God. Bithumb apologized for the mistake and said it has now recovered 99.7% of the excess Bitcoin. The exchange said it restricted trading and withdrawals for 695 affected customers within 35 minutes of the erroneous payout. Quote, "We would like to make it clear that this incident is unrelated to external hacking or security breaches. There are no problems with system security or customer asset management." Yes, there is. Yes, there is, Bithumb. I don't care what you say in the statement. It may not be external hacking, but is it a security breach? Well, it may not be a breach, but it's a security issue. To secure your Bitcoin, you cannot make $44 billion mistakes. I'm sorry, you just can't. There are problems with system security. There are clearly problems with customer asset management. Where did you think the Bitcoin came from? Oh my God. Despite the quick response, reports said a small number of recipients sold or traded the coins before restrictions were imposed. Bithumb told local media it had not yet recovered 125 Bitcoin, worth around $9 million from a small group of customers. The exchange said that it would cover those remaining losses using its own corporate funds. The incident caused an immediate disruption in Bitcoin trading on the platform. Charts from Bithumb showed Bitcoin briefly slumped 17% to 81.1 million won, or roughly $55,000 worth during the sell-off before recovering. The price later rebounded to around 104.5 million won. South Korea's financial regulators responded swiftly. The Financial Services Commission said the incident exposed vulnerabilities in the virtual asset sector. Of course, they jumped on it. Officials said that they would review internal control systems at domestic exchanges and launch on-site inspections if irregularities were found. South Korean newspaper Kukmin Libo reported regulators had already begun an inspection at Bithumb's offices on February the 7th. Investigators reportedly requested a list of employees authorized to issue crypto payments. Unnamed sources quoted by the newspaper described the incident as revealing structural vulnerabilities in the exchange's operational processes. Reports indicate that Bithumb's internal systems allowed employees to issue loyalty points, Korean won, Bitcoin, and shitcoin number 1 without a formal settlement procedure, increasing the risk of payout errors. Executives acknowledged internal shortcomings, and in an email to employees, Exchange Business Division Vice President Hwang Sang-wook said the mistake demonstrated weaknesses within the company's processes. Quote, "The fact that a single error in setting an event reward unit can destabilize an entire crypto exchange demonstrates the current state of our systems." Oh, shit. That's a direct quote. He said that the company would focus on eliminating failures in oversight rather than blaming individuals. And again, that's Executive or Exchange Business Division President Hwang Sung-wook. Bithumb announced compensation measures for customers affected by abnormal trading conditions during the incident. The exchange said that users who sold Bitcoin at unusually low prices during the disruption would receive the full sale amount plus an additional 10%. Oh, let's kiss their ass. Bithumb also said that it would waive trading fees across all markets for 7 days beginning today, February the 9th. The company said that it would provide 20,000 Korean won, or about $15, to customers who were actively using the platform at the time of the incident. The error comes at a sensitive time for the exchange, because they have been pursuing plans to become the first South Korean crypto exchange to go public in the United States this year, and earlier this month, South Korea's consumer protection watchdog launched a probe into Bithumb's marketing claims. For now, Bithumb is in damage control mode. The exchange has promised to compensate users who lost money from panic selling during the glitch. The company also says that it will review and upgrade its internal systems to prevent future errors. Details on specific fixes have not yet been released. Holy shit, y'all. Really? Really? So this seems to have happened at roughly around the same time that the end of the week was occurring, or coming into the into the weekend. This is a bad state of affairs for Bithumb, but as the tinfoil hat soul in me, refuses to go away, I have to start wondering: was it a mistake? Or somehow or another, was it done on purpose to add an extra special selling pressure during a small recovery phase that we saw in Bitcoin starting on Friday? And I do not know the answer to that question. It is pure tinfoil hattery. Doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that I don't know. But I don't know, man. My spidey sense is tingling just a little bit here. And speaking of, why on earth would Jim Cramer state that the United States government is actively buying Bitcoin? Again, right around the time that we see a small recovery in Bitcoin towards the end of the week. Well, let's find out from CoinDesk's Jesse Hamilton. U.S. government is not poised to sweep in with Bitcoin buys despite Jim Cramer rumor. It's a rumor. Nasty, filthy rumor. President Donald Trump's U.S. Bitcoin reserve doesn't exist yet. And there is no mechanism for the federal government for the wholesale purchase of crypto. Keep in mind, when considering this weekend speculation about the price point that would cause the White House to push to buy Bitcoin, thanks in large part to CNBC speculator Jim Cramer, there is no such button. The president did order a strategic reserve established to hold Bitcoin, but that didn't make it spring into existence. The Treasury Department and crypto advisors spent months auditing the federal holdings of crypto, though White House crypto advisor Patrick Witt told CoinDesk last week that they still won't share a number. But the process hit a snag. The advocates said they still need Congress to establish the stockpile under law. The crypto sector's new U.S. law for stablecoin issuers didn't include it, nor does the sweeping crypto market structure bill currently grinding through the U.S. Senate. Clearing legislation through this Congress, even less controversial matters, is a tall order, and industry lobbyists are currently focused on the bill to finally establish market and oversight regulation for digital assets. The reserve may not even be second on the list of priorities because crypto tax rules also beckon. When Mr. Jim Cramer, suggested on air that Trump has a plan, saying, quote, "I heard at 60 he's going to fill the Bitcoin reserve," the crypto markets took some notice. The struggling asset has recently dropped to as low as $62,840, but spent some days hovering just under $70,000. And if the U.S. government stood ready to swoop in at 60, that could be a big deal. But the rumor isn't supported by what's going on with the federal fund. For now, Trump's executive order last year to set up the Bitcoin reserve and a separate stockpile of other crypto assets waits to be fulfilled. And his order carefully rejected the idea of the government purchasing crypto with taxpayer money. Instead, he directed his administration to stop selling seized assets, so anything grabbed in civil or criminal cases is now allegedly being set aside for the future reserve. The White House didn't immediately respond to requests for comment on the weekend speculation, and the government's current Bitcoin holdings may hover around $23 billion, according to data from Arkham Intelligence. Some ideas have been floated by Trump's advisors and by lawmakers such as Cynthia Lummis for how the feds could buy Bitcoin without tapping taxpayers, but no solutions have been chosen. And Lummis's legislative efforts to enact the reserve haven't advanced, even as her Senate tenure dwindles after her announcement that she'll retire after this year. During congressional hearings last week, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was asked whether the government was in a position to bail out Bitcoin, and he said he had no such authority. More specifically, though, he said he can't order U.S. bankers to start buying up crypto. For government purchases, the industry may be better off looking towards states at the moment because several state governments are pursuing Bitcoin reserve authorities last year and have been more nimble than the federal government in setting up pockets of their budget meant for digital assets. So Jim said that Trump's going to start buying Bitcoin at $60,000. How would he know such a thing? You see, again, the tinfoil hat goes right back on my head. Is this coordinated? Okay, probably not coordinated. At least maybe not directly, but maybe even indirectly, because all this stuff happens basically like after most of the bloodletting occurred this last week. So who knows? I can't help putting on the tinfoil hat sometimes because, sometimes it's fun. And this may be fun. The most surprising Bitcoin and crypto stories in the Epstein files, written by Logan Hitchcock, decrypt.co. A search through the trove of files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein provides thousands of results related to crypto and Bitcoin, highlighted by Epstein's early involvement and awareness of notable crypto projects and protocols. Over the course of the week, Decrypt has highlighted some of the larger stories that emerged from the millions of files released last week, including how Epstein invested in Coinbase, oh my God, and Bitcoin firm Blockstream, holy shit, and had a very close relationship with Tether co-founder Brock Pierce. But there's more. Yes, there's plenty more in the files, including references to major crypto players like Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin and Strategy co-founder and executive chairman Michael Saylor. Oh, Mike, here's a look at the most surprising crypto mentions from both batches of the Epstein files released by the Department of Justice. The Coinbase investment. Yes, Jeffrey Epstein was an early investor in publicly traded crypto exchange Coinbase. The convicted sex offender invested $3 million in 2014 and was introduced to the opportunity by Brock Pierce and his investment firm Blockchain Capital. However, Blockchain told Decrypt that Epstein ultimately invested independently, not through that firm. And based on the emails, it's apparent that Coinbase co-founder Fred Ersham was personally aware of the investment, which came years after Epstein's conviction. The investment was made when Coinbase was $400 million, and the publicly traded company is now worth $44 billion. And in 2018, Epstein sold around half of that investment back to Blockchain Capital, emails show. Bitcoin and crypto taxes. So Epstein was seeking clarification about Bitcoin regulation and taxes as early as 2018 in conversation with former Trump strategist Steve Bannon. Epstein suggested that the Treasury Department should create a voluntary disclosure form for crypto gains in an attempt to, quote, fuck all the bad guys, end quote. Later that year, Epstein noted that crypto should be thought of similarly to the internet and handled with, quote, coordinated understandings and international agreements. Now, I've already told you about Brock Pierce and Epstein, so we're not going to do that part. But what about the Blockstream investment? There's a little bit more to that. Epstein was an investor in Blockstream. Quote, Blockstream met with Jeffrey Epstein, who was described at the time as a limited partner in Joy Ito's fund, wrote Adam Back, and that fund later invested a minority stake in Blockstream. The longtime Bitcoiner and his Blockstream co-founder Austin Hill were both invited to Epstein's Island in 2014, according to newly revealed files from the DOJ, but whether or not the trip actually ever happened is unclear from those emails, and Back did not respond to a request for comment. In his confirmation of Epstein's involvement, the Blockstream co-founder added that the firm has no direct nor indirect financial connection with Jeffrey Epstein or his estate at present time. A Bitcoin Core developer and former contributor to Blockstream urged Back to resign this week after the new files were released, and that would be Luke Dash Jr., by the way. Now, Epstein and Peter Thiel talk Bitcoin. In an email from Jeffrey Epstein to famed tech investor Peter Thiel, Bitcoin's narrative was questioned. Quote, there is little agreement on what Bitcoin is, wrote Epstein. Store of intrinsic value or currency, property, is it architecture, a payment system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a direct quote. The reply followed a question from Thiel about an increasing anti-BTC pressure that might be growing within the U.S. government. And at the time, Bitcoin was trading at around $691 per coin. That's a long time ago. That's 2014, y'all. That's a year before I got into it. Holy crap. It's since jumped dramatically. Well, clearly, and we won't worry about that one. But Michael Saylor is in those emails too. The dastardly Michael Saylor, Bitcoin bull and strategy executive chairman Michael Saylor, was called a creep by Epstein's publicist, Peggy Siegel, in an email to the convicted sex offender in 2010. Oh, wow. If you're called a creep by the Epstein crew, that actually may be a badge of honor. I mean, I don't know how much more creepy it is to be in Epstein's crew knowing what the hell was going on with Epstein, because you're not working for Epstein unless you know what the hell Epstein's up to. Not when you're the publicist. That's one of your closest working relationships as a public figure. If you're that big, if you're like Epstein big, you've got a publicist. And that publicist knows essentially damn near just as much about you as you do, sometimes even more, because that's their job. They're a publicist. Peggy knew, and she calls Michael Saylor a creep. Hell, that may just mean Michael Saylor's an all right guy. Quote, he has no personality, though. Sort of like a zombie on drugs, wrote Siegel of Saylor. Quote, I walked around him, and he was so weird that even I ran away from him. End quote. According to the email, Saylor provided $25,000 for a spring gala for the opportunity to get his name on the invite and meet a hip group of people. The email was sent more than a decade before Saylor's software firm would make its first Bitcoin purchase, with the firm amassing nearly $50 billion worth of the asset and inspiring a wave of followers. Then we have, I love this one, questionable ethics. Despite his 2008 conviction for procuring a child for prostitution and soliciting a prostitute, a decade later, Epstein was concerned about the ethics of funding projects in the crypto space. Quote, I am more than happy to fund things, but as I am high profile, it can't be questionable ethics. Epstein wrote in an email to Bitcoin researcher Jeremy Rubin, who replied telling the financer that there's a gray area between pump and develop. Quote, their deal is to pump the currency, said Epstein of investors in the space. It's dangerous. Epstein, what were you pumping? You've got the gall to talk about ethics. Holy smokes. And then there's Vitalik Buterin, co-founder of Ethereum. His name is in the Epstein files, but not as a result of any direct connections or correspondence with the disgraced financier. Instead, the latest batch of emails show an email Epstein received from Masha Drakova that highlights that the Russian investor had found a super smart and young blockchain enthusiast in Russia. Quote, he can be better than Vitalik Buterin if he focuses on the technology, Drakova said. Although she offered to connect Epstein to the Russian individual, it's not clear who that technologist was or whether or not they were ultimately linked to Epstein. Okay, so that's a lit down. Vitalik Buterin was just mentioned in passing in the Epstein files. Wow. You know, it's dirty pool, old man. This whole thing is just, it smells bad. The more that people read now, like another person from Keir Starmer's staff has stepped down. I just learned that shit this morning. I guess it happened, I don't know, maybe like late last week or something like that. But still, he's lost not only the ambassador to the United States, Lord Mandelbaum, but also this other dude. And I don't know who the other dude is, but apparently is pretty close to Keir Starmer's cabinet. And he's gone because Epstein. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And now, shit, there's like, oh God, was it Fergie? Whatever her name is, Miss Ferguson was part of the royal family, and she's got caught with her britches down around her freaking ankles with Epstein. She's in the emails, apparently charging $500 million to get some people in to go tour Buckingham Palace or some shit. I can't remember exactly what it was, but now she's directly implicated in having direct dealings with Epstein. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And I go back to my original question. How did this man have time in the day to forge all these connections? I mean, yeah, he's been doing it for decades. Okay, but still, it's like he'd have to be on the phone 24/7 to have these kinds of connections with all these people. I mean, it's not just that they're powerful. There's so many of them. Like I said, man, this is a dirty pool. Things smell terrible. There's like shit all over these people. Maybe they should contact SoapMiner at SoapMiner.com. At SoapMiner, we believe in the power of two transformative passions, crafting exquisite natural soap and embracing the revolution of Bitcoin. Our journey is just beginning. Our natural soaps are the heart and soul of our brand. Each bar is meticulously crafted using only the finest ingredients, sourced sustainably to ensure that we're kind to both your skin and the environment. We're committed to transparency and quality so you can trust that each product is free from harmful chemicals and artificial additives. We view soap making as an art, a harmonious blend of nature's bounties that speaks to our commitment of sustainability and wellness. Our products are not just soaps. They are a reflection of our passion for purity and self-care. And I feel that every single time I pick up a bar of SoapMiner brand soap. I love this soap. Right now, my favorite, which just happens to be on the bathroom sink, is cedarwood. Yes, cedarwood soap. This stuff smells freaking fantabulous. There's a way to use this soap. If you're just going to wash your hands, try this. This stuff has 100% grass-fed beef tallow as its fat base. It's got distilled water and lye. That's his soap base. 3 ingredients, right? But that tallow, that's a natural animal fat. It's really good for your skin. So if you use SoapMiner soap, consider using it this way. Pick up the bar of soap dry, right? It may have a wet underside. Mine normally does. And I keep my soap elevated out of the pool of water that collects in the soap dish, because you don't want to do that. That'll ruin your soap. Keep it elevated with like a little mat or something like that. And the bottom side will probably be a little moist. Rub that on the backs of both your hands and into your palms, and then turn on the water. But before you start washing your hands and getting a lather, just rub the residue of the soap around your hands, back of your hand, rub it in, because that way you're doing one thing first. You're actually moisturizing your skin. Then, after about a minute of that, then put your hands underneath the water and start lathering, and then rinse everything off and then dry your hands. This allows the beef tallow to have a little bit of extra time on your skin. If you do that, your skin will start to feel much more luxurious over time. Go to SoapMiner.com, use coupon code Bitcoin and for 10% off your entire purchase. Remember, coupon code Bitcoin and SoapMiner.com. He's a proud member of the Circle P family of vendors. The Circle P is where I bring plebs with goods and services that are just like you, to plebs just like you that want to buy said goods and services, but you will buy it in Bitcoin, because if you're not selling it in Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P. Go to SoapMiner.com, use Bitcoin and for 10% off. Polymarket fights back. Sues Massachusetts in growing state federal fight over prediction markets. Kyle Baird from The Block. Polymarket has filed a federal lawsuit against Massachusetts as tensions rise between prediction market operators and state gaming regulators over who has the authority to oversee event-based contracts. In a post Monday on X, Polymarket's chief legal officer, Neil Kumar, said the company is suing Massachusetts in federal court, arguing that Congress granted exclusive authority over event contracts to the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission rather than individual states. Quote, these are national markets with critical questions that must be resolved in federal court, Kumar wrote, adding that efforts by states to shut down platforms offering prediction markets does not change federal law. The suit comes as states increasingly seek to treat sports-related prediction contracts as gambling products subject to local licensing and oversight. And then they talk about Massachusetts and Nevada. They're all suing Kalshi and or trying to get injunctions against Kalshi and Polymarket because they don't want them playing in their sandbox. I mean, it's gaming, dude. This is one of the oldest money makers that there is, and generally speaking, it's organized crime. Who built Las Vegas? Bugsy Siegel, even though he didn't like the name Bugsy, but Bugsy Siegel was one of the people, and I believe he was from the Kansas City crew, not New York, not Chicago, Kansas City, that started that basically picked out that little patch of land in Nevada that nobody wanted and built, I believe the Sands Casino is the first one that was built. And then of course others followed suit, but it's all organized crime. You don't go play in the sandbox with gangsters and expect to come out not only alive, but at least have injunctions slapped against you, because this is a deep-seated market in the United States. Gambling, gaming, that casinos, cards, the whole ball of wax, man. But Polymarket's pushing back, and they're using as their sword the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, who they say, and it looks like they're correct, that they have been the ones given at the federal level pretty much exclusivity on who gets to play in whose sandbox. It will end up being a fight probably between the states and the federal government. I can't wait. Let's run the numbers. CNBC futures and commodities. Well, I guess we're one step closer to bombing the shit out of Iran, because Brent North Sea is up 2 points to 69 and 4 dimes. West Texas Intermediate oil is up 2% to $64.08. Natural gas, however, taking it between the legs, 7.6% to the downside, back to 316 you go. Gasoline is up 2.22% to $1.99 a gallon, and Merbon crude is up 1.4% to $69.66. All your shiny metal rocks are in recovery mode today. Palladium up a half point, gold up 2.3, just peaking over $5,000 to $5,094 and a dime. Platinum is up 1.1%. Silver, however, beating everybody, 8 1/3% to the upside. 83.29 is the price for an ounce of that stuff, and copper is up 1 1/3. Then we go to ag, which is pretty much fully mixed today. Biggest loser is chocolate, 3.8% to the downside. Biggest winner is sugar, 2% to the upside. Live cattle is up 0.18%, but lean hogs are down 1 1/3, and feeder cattle are down 0.2 of a point. The S&P is up a half. NASDAQ is up 0.88%. The Dow is moving essentially sideways, but still the index is showing 50,194. That is all-time high territory. Like a couple of weeks ago, we almost did it. We were staying around like 49,000, and then boom, we crossed 50,000, and we haven't come back down below it as of yet, at least not on a daily close. The S&P Mini is up 0.25%. And then we got Bitcoin, which is $70,790. That's a $1.41 trillion market cap. We can only purchase 14.0 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,986,563.66 of, and average fees per block are usual 0.02 BTC, taken in fees on a per block basis. Looks to be about 35 blocks carrying 24,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 3 sats per VByte. Low priorities get you in at 0.6. Now, mining We are still below the whatever zettahash territory, but we've recovered a lot of the lost hash rate. I'm looking at 995 exahashes per second as the hash rate, which represents the security of your Bitcoin network. And that's just more security than you could ever ask for. From Crash Test Dummies, Friday's episode of Bitcoin, and I got Jason High with 250 says, thanks for the show. You're welcome. Jay with 2,100 sats says, thank you. No, thank you. Nick Dose with 145 sats says, cheers. Oak Grove with 1248 says, per episode 1248's cover art, you're turning the Bitcoin gay. Gay. I'm turning the Bitcoin gay, apparently. Thank you, Oak Grove. Vermilion with 100 says, on the sex thing, try being a high drive male married to a closet asexual. The only thing I've had sex with for almost 18 years is my hand. Oh, dude. Vermilion, my heart goes out for you, man. Condolences, dude. There are some people, they exist, that are not interested in sex. It happens. If you love that person, you stay with them throughout. How you fix the whole sexual thing, I wish I could tell you. I really do, because I don't want you stepping outside of your marriage. And just go to Nevada, go to a brothel. Well, not when you're married. Not if you want to stay faithful. But ultimately, all that shit's up to the person. It's not up to somebody else giving you advice, whether it's good advice or bad advice or unethical or ethical. It doesn't really matter, because the only answer solely lies within your own heart and with your own mind. But again, man, condolences, dude, because that's some tough shit. Nostr Gang with a short row of sticks says, the talk of chocolate got me salivating. It should. Progressively worse with a longer row of sticks says, lit Bitcoin and podcast. Oh, wait, I already read this one to you. I read this one to you on Friday. So that means that's the end of the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. 8 years later, Lightning is proving the skeptics wrong. Bobby Shell is writing this one for Bitcoin News. On December 27th, 2017, a developer named Alex Bosworth paid his phone bill using the Lightning Network. It was a modest transaction, a few dollars to top up a Swedish mobile plan, but it marked the first real-world use of a protocol that promised to transform Bitcoin from a store of value into a medium of exchange. 8 years later, that promise is being delivered. The Lightning Network has evolved from an experimental concept into critical financial infrastructure, and its continued maturation suggests that Bitcoin's role in the global payment system is only beginning. When Joseph Poon and Thaddeus Dryja published the Lightning Network paper in February of 2015, Bitcoin faced a fundamental constraint. The network could process roughly 7 transactions per second. Visa, by comparison, handles around 24,000. For Bitcoin to function as peer-to-peer electronic cash, the vision outlined in Satoshi Nakamoto's original white paper, something had to change. The debate that followed nearly fractured the Bitcoin community. Some argued for larger blocks. Others insisted that scaling should happen in layers, preserving the base layer security and decentralization while building payment infrastructure on top of it. Lightning represented the latter approach, a network of payment channels that could settle transactions instantly and at near zero cost, anchored to Bitcoin's blockchain for final settlement. The skeptics were loud. Critics called it vaporware. Others warned that the complexity of payment channels would never translate into usable products. The question hanging over Lightning was simple. Could it actually work at scale? The answer, 8 years later, is yes, it can. And the evidence is difficult to dismiss. Lightning Network capacity recently hit an all-time high above 5,600 Bitcoin, representing nearly $500 million in value locked across payment channels. Transaction volume surged 266% year over year in 2025. Payment success rates and optimized deployments now exceed 99%. These are not the metrics of an experiment. They are the metrics of a maturing infrastructure. The adoption curve has shifted decisively toward institutional and enterprise use. Major cryptocurrency exchanges, including Binance, OKX, and Kraken, now route withdrawals through Lightning, reducing costs and settlement times for millions of users. Cash App reported a 7-fold increase in Lightning usage in 2024 alone. Steak and Shake, after integrating Lightning payments in May of 2025, reported a 50% reduction in payment processing fees, a concrete example of how this technology translates into bottom-line savings for businesses. Perhaps the most significant validation came from El Salvador. When the country adopted Bitcoin as legal tender in September 2021, it relied heavily on the government-backed Chivo wallet, onboarding 4 million users within months, demonstrating that Lightning could handle real-world payment volume in a national economy. Yeah, it's too bad the Chivo wallet was kind of broken, but whatever. The infrastructure layer is also expanding beyond Bitcoin-denominated payments because in early 2025, Tether announced that it would launch USDT on the Lightning Network via the Taproot Assets protocol. This development could transform Lightning from a Bitcoin-only payment rail into a multi-asset settlement infrastructure, combining the stability of dollar-denominated transactions with speed and low fees that Lightning provides. For businesses and users who want fast payments without exposure to Bitcoin's price volatility, this represents a meaningful step forward. None of this means Lightning has solved every challenge. Honest assessment requires not acknowledging what still needs work. Network topology data reveals significant concentrations. The top nodes control a disproportionate share of routing capacity, with some estimates placing the node capacity Gini coefficient above 0.95. This concentration raises questions about censorship resistance and, of course, single points of failure. If a handful of large nodes went offline or began selectively routing payments, the impact could ripple across the network. User experience remains a barrier for non-technical participants. Opening channels, managing liquidity, and understanding payment routing still require more sophistication than just tapping a credit card. While custodial solutions have simplified access, they reintroduce the trusted intermediaries that Bitcoin was designed to eliminate. Node count has declined from a peak of over 20,700 in early 2022 to around 15,000 today. This consolidation may reflect efficiency gains, but it also narrows the network's decentralized foundation. The challenges are real, but they are also being addressed. Protocol improvements like channel splicing and multipath payments are making liquidity management more efficient. Infrastructure providers are abstracting complexity so that businesses can deploy Lightning without deep technical expertise. The network itself is maturing in the way that most successful technologies mature, solving problems iteratively, learning from failures, and building on what works. The more fundamental point is that Lightning's critics predicted that it would never work at all. The current debate is about optimization and decentralization trade-offs within a functioning system. That is a very different conversation than the one being had in 2018. The trajectory is clear, but the destination not guaranteed. Lightning has proven that Bitcoin can support fast, low-cost payments at a meaningful scale. The question now is whether that capability translates into widespread adoption beyond the cryptocurrency ecosystem. The pieces are falling into place. Stablecoin integration addresses volatility concerns. Enterprise tooling is reducing implementation friction. Regulatory clarity in key markets is giving businesses confidence to build. The infrastructure that seemed speculative 8 years ago is now processing real value for real users. Bitcoin's long-term significance will not be measured solely by its price. It will be measured by whether it becomes foundational infrastructure for global payments, a system that anyone can access, a system that settles in seconds, a system that operates without gatekeepers. Lightning is the path toward that outcome. The next 8 years will determine whether Bitcoin remains primarily a speculative asset or becomes the settlement layer for a new financial system. For those building on Lightning today, the answer is already taking shape. All right, that's the end of the article. I don't think you can call 8 years. I mean, no one knows what the next 8 years actually means, because he says basically that in 8 years, we will figure out whether or not all of this becomes part of the global infrastructure. I don't know, man. That's a little hyperbolic for me. I kind of don't like that. But hey, Lightning is proving all the skeptics wrong. If you don't remember, Roger Ver, also known as Bitcoin Jesus, one of the earliest people in Bitcoin, and one of the people that gave Bitcoin not its name, but its recognition. He was relentless. Roger Ver has kind of turned into something that I'd rather not, hang around with. But at the time, he was Bitcoin's biggest advocate. And when Lightning came out and the first test nets were available, and then, Elizabeth Stark, CEO of Lightning Labs, she told people straight up, don't put any money into Lightning. This is an experiment. If you put any Bitcoin on this, understand that you can lose it all. And that would be what she called reckless. And then what did we all do? We put money on Bitcoin, on the Lightning network. And then we started getting on Twitter with the hashtag, I put money on Lightning Network, hashtag reckless. Yeah, that's exactly the first thing we did was become reckless. And one of the first people to say that it doesn't work and that it cannot work and that it's not real Bitcoin, et cetera, was Roger Ver, who said up and down that he was never able to actually make a functional Lightning Network transaction. At least at that time. I'm sure things have changed now, but at the time, he bent over backwards to make sure that everybody knew that Lightning didn't work. It was working for me. I don't know what Roger Ver's problem was, but he's one of the critics that has been proven wrong. And now he's been proven wrong again and again and again and again. And all the other people that said that Lightning would never work, they're all wrong. Lightning actually works just fine. In fact, I make more Lightning Network transactions than I do Bitcoin on-chain transactions. And when I close out a channel or I open a new Lightning channel, I have to settle on-chain. And that is a Bitcoin transaction. And it works. It works really good. But what happens when Quantum gets a hold of it? Oh my God, it's quantum mechanics. CoinShares reports that only 10,230 Bitcoin are actually vulnerable to a quantum attack. This is out of Atlas 21. Let's see what they have to say about it. According to CoinShares, only a small fraction of Bitcoin appear to be held in wallets that are vulnerable to quantum computing attacks. In a post published on Friday, Christopher Bendiksen, I think is how you pronounce it, CoinShares head of Bitcoin research, argued that only 10,230 Bitcoin out of 1.63 million Bitcoin are located in addresses with publicly visible cryptographic keys vulnerable to quantum attacks. According to his analysis, just over 7,000 Bitcoin are held in wallets with 100 to 1,000 BTC, while approximately 3,233 Bitcoin are kept in wallets with 1,000 to 10,000 BTC, equivalent to $719.1 million at current prices. The remaining 1.62 million Bitcoin are stored in wallets with less than 100 BTC, which, according to the researcher, would require a millennium each to crack, even in the most optimistic scenario of technological progression in quantum compute. The key point is that most of the potentially exposed Bitcoin is not sitting in a handful of giant, juicy targets. It's scattered across more than 32,000 separate chunks of coins, and each chunk averages about 50 Bitcoin. He explained that these theoretical risks stem from quantum algorithms such as Shor's, which could compromise Bitcoin's elliptic curve signatures, and Grover's, which could weaken the secure hash algorithm 256, or rather SHA 256. However, he argued that neither quantum algorithm could alter Bitcoin's 21 million supply limit, nor can it bypass proof of work. The issue has divided the Bitcoin community between those advocating for implementing a quantum-resistant hard fork and those preferring to wait. And then he shares, Bendikinson, or however you pronounce it, shares the views of figures like Strategy's Michael Saylor and Blockstream's Adam Back, who consider quantum threats overblown, stating that Bitcoin is far from dangerous territory. He emphasized that compromising Bitcoin's cryptography would require millions of fault-tolerant qubits, currently far beyond the 105 qubits achieved by Google's latest quantum computer named Willow. Quote, to break current asymmetric cryptography, one would need something in the order of millions of qubits. Willow, Google's current computer, is 105 qubits. And as soon as you add one more qubit, it becomes exponentially more difficult to maintain a coherent system, said Ledger CTO Charles Guillemont, I think is how you pronounce that one, and other experts like Capriol Investments' Charles Edwards consider quantum computing a potential existential threat to Bitcoin, arguing that an immediate upgrade is necessary to strengthen the network security. Edwards has stated that Bitcoin could be revalued upward once a solution is implemented, which some researchers like Blockstream's Jonas Nix suggest could involve adopting post-quantum signatures. Okay, so Charles Edwards is sounding the alarm. He's beating on the table. Michael Saylor and Adam Back are saying, chill out, dude. And why not? Michael Saylor just bought 1,142 Bitcoin for $90 million. I wonder what his cost basis was. Let's find out from Micah Zimmerman, Bitcoin Magazine. Strategy bought another 1,142 Bitcoin for $90 million, extending its long-running accumulation campaign, even as the company's massive treasury remains underwater, at least on paper. The purchase was disclosed Monday in an 8K filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Strategy said that it acquired the coins between February 2nd and February 8th at an average price of, wait for it, $78,815 per Bitcoin. So he's still underwater. Okay, pausing. Please, someone get a hold of Michael Saylor and tell him to stop buying Bitcoin Monday through Thursday. It's just that simple. Start buying on Fridays and continue buying through Saturday and Sunday. You've got to stop buying Monday through Thursday. They've got your number, Mike. They're just waiting for you. They're waiting for you, pal. They see you buying and they start selling because they know it's going to crater the price. They want you dead, Mike. I don't know why. I mean, anybody who's called a creep by the Epstein crew, I would probably have a beer with. I would feel safe having a beer with Mike. He's creepy. He's like a zombie on drugs. Well, when you get called that by somebody who clearly knows that somebody's diddling 8-year-old girls, I will hang out with that zombie on drugs way before I hang out with fucking Epstein or any one of his crew. Because that shit's nasty. I'd much rather just walk around with Mike while he's just zombifying out. Hell, Mike could even be drooling. As long as he's not buying Bitcoin Monday through Thursday, I'd actually be happy. The latest buy lifts Strategy's total holdings to 714,644 Bitcoin. The stack is valued near $50 billion at current market prices, and Strategy has roughly spent $54.4 billion to build that position, including fees and expenses. The average purchase price across all holdings averages $76,056 per coin. So he's a little underwater here, but he's got something to say about quantum. He really does. Again, Micah Zimmerman out of Bitcoin Magazine has this to say. Strategy's executive chairman, Michael Saylor, said on the company's fourth quarter 2025 earnings call that Strategy will initiate a Bitcoin security program. The effort is meant to coordinate with the global cyber, crypto, and Bitcoin security community. In the call, Saylor framed quantum computing as a long-term engineering challenge rather than an immediate danger, He said the technology is likely more than a decade away from posing any serious risk to Bitcoin's cryptography. During the call, Strategy displayed a slide titled Quantum and Our Commitment to Bitcoin Security. It listed quantum concerns as the latest form of Bitcoin FUD alongside past fears that network and strategy as a whole have endured. The company outlined its position that many industries, including financial services and defense, still depend on traditional cryptography. It noted that global investment is already flowing into quantum-resistant security research. Let's pause. I tried to say this on several occasions. Let's go back and read this sentence. Strategy outlined its position that many industries, including all financial services and defense, that means bombs and rockets and nuclear warheads with nuclear codes that are what? Dependent on asymmetric cryptography. I'm telling you, man, if Bitcoin is literally one of the least of our worries. It's like, okay, well, so we've cracked quantum. We can crack all this signature shit. We've got everybody's account numbers. We got all the Bitcoin wallet. We got it all. So let's hit Bitcoin first. And if you don't think that there's somebody at the other end of that table who goes, "Are you stupid?" Not because they would crash Bitcoin. They don't care. We can put the fear of God into any country in the world and fake being any other country of the world that's nuclear armed to do it with. We don't even have to look like we're the ones that are doing it. We can literally make Pakistan freak the fuck out because India launches a nuclear warhead at them because the codes are compromised. It could be a tack nuke. I mean, not 400 kilotons. No, more like, I don't know, 0.2 kilotons. It's still a nuclear warhead. It just doesn't have the punch that like a Trident missile would have, say. But wouldn't you, what would have more value? You being able to make other countries look bad, crash their economies? Pick up the pieces after everybody's done selling on like in India's market because nobody wants to be in a market where they're going to go to nuclear war against Pakistan and then buy it all up and then in mid-flight have that son of a bitch abort. Yeah, the tack nuke actually aborted and everybody sold while it was in flight. And then here's a whole bunch of people that have cracked that code. Instead of worrying about Bitcoin, they're trying to figure out ways that they can actually use this technology and the cracking of asymmetric cryptography to a much better punch in the face for whatever they want to punch than Bitcoin's $1.4 trillion market cap. I love Bitcoin. I believe it's the future. But that does not mean that I'm a rube. I'm not a banjo playing, bridge sitting, backwoods genetic defective. There are bigger markets. There's gold markets. There's entire stock exchanges. There's geopolitical maneuvering to be had. And you're going to do what? Chase $1.41 trillion? Are you stupid? No, man. I worry about even if asymmetric cryptography was broken tomorrow, we would have weeks of just we would have much bigger problems than Bitcoin. I guarantee it. I'm just saying. But thank God for Michael Saylor because he's on our side. Saylor said that the Bitcoin community is already engaged in work on quantum resistant protocols anyway. He added that if Bitcoin ever requires an upgrade, it would come through broad global consensus. The announcement comes during a volatile period for both Bitcoin and crypto-linked equities. Yeah, well, we know. And then they start talking about the Bitcoin dip and then how much money they've spent on Bitcoin and how much and it doesn't matter. It appears that that Saylor is going to start funding. Now, he says he is until he actually cuts a check or makes a Bitcoin transaction to developers to help them with this quantum resistance problem. Then I won't believe him. But he said he's going to start helping fund quantum resistant technologies specifically for Bitcoin, but that would be able to be used for anything using asymmetric cryptography. So it's not like he wouldn't be in the catbird seat of being able to sell technology. We'll have to wait until he actually cuts a check or, makes a bank transfer or a Bitcoin transfer or a Lightning Network transaction or something before I actually believe him. But I think that we should chill out a little bit. It doesn't mean don't work on it. I think they should work on it. But I don't think they should work at it at a frenzied pace where mistakes are made. We should be looking at this carefully, and we should be looking at it over the long term. And I do not think that we're going to go from 105 qubits to millions of qubits within a couple of years. Because, it is true that every time you add a qubit, you've got a much larger problem to solve trying to add another qubit to that. This is not easy. It's just not easy. And neither is difficulty mining, but it has become easier because the difficulty has plunged 11%. Oh my God, it's the worst drop since 2021. Frightening. I'm fucking terrified over here. From Atlas 21, Bitcoin mining difficulty crashed 11.16% on Saturday, dropping to a measly punk-ass 125.86 trillion at block 935424, according to data from Mempool Explorer. The adjustment came from 141.67 trillion, with average block times having reached approximately 11.4 minutes before the retarget, well above the protocol's 10-minute target line. The decline was driven by approximately a 20% drop in the network's total hash rate over the past month. Luxor's hash rate shows that hash rate fell 11% in the last week alone to about, 863 exahashes per second, down from all-time highs of above 1.1 zettahashes reached in October. Two factors caused this hash rate crash. Bitcoin's price plummeted over 45% from October's all-time high, and it dropped to around $60,000 on February the 5th. Bouncing back to 68,800 on Saturday. And then Winter Storm Fern. Oh, they finally named it. Winter Storm Fern in late January also forced miners in the United States energy regions to curtail operations. The storm took roughly 200 exahashes per second offline, with Foundry's USA hash rate dropping about 60%. So there you go. We're all going to die. Bitcoin is no longer secure. Oh, wait, yes, it is. Not only is hash rate, recovering, it's not that far from 1 zettahash per second. So we really got to calm down. Please remember, most of all of this is FUD. And it's not going to matter. It's just not going to matter. They always do this to us. So just be on the lookout for FUD. Have a smoking, most wonderful week that you possibly can. Be happy, be joyful, put a little skip in your step. Think of abundance. Think of your tribe, and think of strength, that inner resilience. Have those thoughts in your head rather than, oh my God, Saylor's underwater. Oh my God, difficulty plunged. Oh my God, this, and oh my God, that, because it's all bullshit. There's very few things that matter. Strength and resilience, your tribe, your people. Be abundant to them. They in turn will probably be abundant to you. Maybe not exactly that second, but later on, especially when you need it. Think of abundance and all of that. Because it all works together. Strength, abundance, and your tribe. Shit, that's what built Bitcoin in the first damn place. So that should be the theme of the week. Not whatever Trump is doing, whatever Saylor's saying, whatever Charles Edwards says about quantum computing. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Doesn't mean it won't. It just means that it's not going to happen anytime soon. So I will definitely have time to see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.